Alberta has seen months and years of drought, and earlier this year it found itself in a situation that could threaten the province's access to water and require government intervention. And so, fearing the worst, work started on drawing up what the government called unprecedented water sharing agreements. Spoiler alert, the worst case scenario, declaring an emergency under the Water Act. Now, Alberta avoided that, but some water sharing agreements did come into effect. And while the province is touting its water sharing agreements as a major success that could be replicated across the country, some experts wonder, can the current water management structure work when the province is faced with a prolonged drought and a population boom?
Almost unprecedented situation.
The volumes of water have never been this low.
Farmers struggling. They're hoping for rain, but it just isn't coming.
Let me take you back to December 2023, after summer when several municipalities declared agricultural disasters. Things were looking bleak in southern Alberta's reservoirs. They weren't as full as they needed to be to get through the winter and spring thaw. The snow forecast as well wasn't promising, so the province sends letters to municipalities warning them, get ready to conserve water. And so work began on a drought emergency plan. Fast forward to April.
The biggest and oldest water license users in each basin came together to voluntarily agree to reduce the water use if severe drought conditions do in fact develop this summer.
So these agreements were written up preparing for the worst, putting major water users in the Red Deer River subbasin, the Bow River subbasin, as well as the main stem and upper tributaries of the Oldman River subbasin on notice. But these agreements were voluntary. They didn't have legal teeth. And by May, only 2 of the agreements were activated, those tied to the Oldman River. Now, Alberta avoided the worst because spring brought in just enough rain at the right time of year for a quick recovery of southern Alberta's water supply and soil moisture. Not everywhere. Conditions varied across the province, but enough. And Alberta never saw officials declare an emergency under the Water Act. Now, the province says it is proud of what was accomplished in the face of that possible scenario. The municipalities and irrigators who fell under those active agreements tied to the Oldman River, they stepped up. The city of Lethbridge brought down water use 10%, Lethbridge County by 23.5%, Medicine Hat's water use went down 17%. The St. Mary River Irrigation District and the United Irrigation District both saw water allocations cut in half to start the year and adjusted their allocations as drought conditions improved. Now, things turned out this year, but one expert worries how far the agreements go if things get bad. Here's the thing. Alberta's water is doled out to those who hold water licenses, and the priority for water is based on a first-in-time, first-in-right system, meaning those who received rights to water first, they're first in line when it comes to using up the water they are allowed to. Doesn't matter if they are a municipality, a farmer, or a summer camp. It's also why these water sharing agreements were voluntary. That could lead to issues down the road, according to this expert.
I think cutbacks are easier to justify, but as soon as this becomes something on the order of what we saw in the 1930s, where it was like a 10-year drought, as soon as we start to have that situation and you're really asking people to change their bottom line almost permanently, then I think the voluntary nature is going to start to fall apart. And so I think it's a very precarious slope that we're on.
She says there are places in the U.S. that, in emergency situations, will shift from their status quo to a different system that isn't just voluntary and quickly mandates water users to cut back. Another law expert at the University of Alberta said this spring, some of the debate around water rights and use revolved around redistributing things based on who needs access to the water most, and shifting to a system that treats access to water to a needs-based ranking. And that's where things get muddy, he told me, because then somebody needs to decide who is more important, a municipality or a farmer. And the province isn't ready to get into that debate. but it did say it believes the approach it took this year did help mitigate impacts. Joel Dryden, CBC News, Calgary.